Okay, so this is the tutorial to make the hand-sewn project for the bag. So we've already read through all the instructions. Now we're going to cut the pattern pieces out of the paper to follow the instructions on the pattern. So this is our pattern pieces, and we are going to cut those out of the paper. So it says we need to cut 2. So we're going to cut our pattern out first, and then we're going to cut 2 pieces out of the fabric. Okay, so there's our pattern. Next step, place the pattern on the fabric. I'm going to take 2 pieces of fabric. And place it right on top. Okay. All right, so I've placed my pattern on top. The next step says, cut the fabric or secure pattern pieces in place by using sewing pins. So I'm going to do that. Just remember, I'm going through both layers. I might only have 3 pins, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin here, here, and here. I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to unpin this one and stick it on this side. Okay. Now it's easier to cut neat and nice if you keep your pattern and your fabric flat on your table or whatever work surface you're using. Okay, remember, now I'm going to cut this side, so I'm going to take one of these pins off because I've already done that side, and I'm going to pin it here just to keep it secure. I'm going to keep my hand on the pattern so my fabric doesn't move around on the table also. Okay, so we've got that cut out. Step number 5, cut fabric around the edges of the pattern pieces following the instructions on the pattern, which we've done. And the instructions say to cut 2 pieces of this pattern to create a top and a bottom layer. So we've got our 2 pieces here, top and bottom layer. Cut across the dotted line on the fabric for the top layer only. Okay, so for the top layer only, we are going to cut across the dotted line. So I'm going to fold that down, and I'm actually going to take out my pins so that I don't cut the back, because that flap, this is the flap that's going to make it a bag, so we're going to fold it down. I'm going to put that right back and secure it in place so that I know where I need to cut. Okay. Actually, I could do this. Either way, we could cut across here and cut that top part off, or we can fold it down. It's going to be the same thing. But I'm only cutting across that area on one piece of fabric, not both. Okay. The bottom layer will have a small horizontal slit cut where indicated by the X for a buttonhole, and the top layer will have a button sewn indicated by the X. So I will have the button up here, and there will be a slit down here on the bottom layer. Okay, let's take a look at these instructions. Unpin the pattern pieces from the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to unpin. Now it says, choosing one of the following ideas to decorate the top piece of your bag before sewing layers together. Use a running stitch to embroider lettering such as initials, words, or outline a scene. Use the additional colors of felt fabric if available to create a scene, and use a running stitch to secure picture pieces in place. So that's going to be my next step. Okay, so when I do my design, it needs to be on the top layer, and this is going to be the top layer. So my design needs to be on the layer that does not have a flap. When I'm finished with this, I'm going to be sewing all around the edges. Let's see if I can get a better view. And this will come down and button right there. So that is going to be the back, and I'm going to put that aside. This is going to be the front, just this regular rectangle is going to be the front with my design. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do for my design is I'm just going to make little kind of star, asterisk, snowflake things all over the place. And I'm going to do these same things on my bag. And remember, that's going to be on the layer that is the top layer. So I'm going to do that here on the rectangle part. Okay, so when I begin, I'm going to have my thread like normal and my needle. I'm going to thread that. Let's zoom in just a little bit. Okay, pull that through, and remember, I don't need to tie my two ends together because this is already thick. I'm just going to tie one end, and because it's so thick, the knot for one end is going to keep it from coming out of my fabric. So this is just going to hang. So I'm going to have one loose end right here, and my other end of my string has the knot. Okay, so there's my knot right there. And then I'm going to start, this is going to be the back side or the inside. I'm just going to start, and I'm going to make my little asterisks or my little stars. I'm going to go down. Remember, wherever your outside is, your needle needs to be, or your knot needs to be on the other side. I'm going to come across. And you can do whatever kind of design you want to do on the front of yours. If you have different colors of thread left in your kit, you can use those different colors of thread. You just might have to double up and go over the pieces, or go over your design multiple times so it can be seen a little bit better. Okay, I don't know where that came from. And then I'll do one coming from this direction. And go across. And then I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot in the back once I've done this star, so that I can save a little bit of string for my other stars, because if I just kind of stretch it across, so like if I wanted to come over here and make a star over here, I'm going to have all the string that's wasted from here to here. So instead of wasting that, I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot so my stitching does not come undone. So I'll go in under a stitch just like I've done before, made a loop, go through the loop, and pull. Okay. I can do that 2 more times. Under a stitch. My string is so long that it's pulling things into it. Okay, where did my loop go? There's a tiny little loop there, so I'm going to go under that loop. There's my loop. I just pulled it back out. Through the loop. Oh my goodness. And pull. Keep getting trash stuck up in here. which is why it's a good idea to have a clear workspace. Okay, pull. Okay, and then we're going to cut. I'm going to tie my end again, and then I'm going to make an asterisk or a little star in a different location. You can also do your initials if you want to. You can make it for a parent or a sibling. You can make it as big or as little as you want as far as your design goes. Try to be creative. You're going to have, you know, another 7 days to be working on this project during class time. So pick something that's going to look nice and will be a good memory for you. Okay, and that's it on that one. Same thing on the back. Okay, so I've got 2 little stars there so far. Okay, so I've made my design. I finished another star here, and then I went ahead and put a snowflake here. And let's take a look and see what we need to do now. All right, so place button on top layer were indicated by the X. So this is my top layer, remember? And it needs to be where the X is. So I'm going to put this on top here. And it needs to be right about there. So I'm just going to get, I can either put a marker there, and just put a little dot, or I can put a pin there. If I don't have a marker, I'm going to do that, and then I can put a pin to mark that spot. Right there, I'm going to put my finger there and pin it. That tells me that's where my button needs to go. Okay? So with my button, you have one more in your sewing kit, and it's that 2-hole button, and you're just going to put it right on that spot, and you're going to sew it in place. I'm using my thread for this instead of my string because the buttonholes are so small that the string might not fit through there. So remember, with the button, we're going to go through the holes about 5 times, then we're going to do a shank. So that's 2, and then we're going to put knots in the back. I can't seem to find the hole. There it is. 3. 4. 5. Okay, I'm in the back. I'm going to go through the middle. And pull my needle up through the middle. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Take my needle and go back through the middle to the back. And then I'm going to finish off with my knots. One, through a stitch, make a loop, through the loop and pull. Under a stitch, make a loop, through the loop, pull. There's that. Okay, now with my button sewn on. All right, next step. So I sewed my button over the X, pinned the top and bottom layers together. We actually do need to cut our slit. So the slit has to be just small enough for this button to go through. Not too big, or it won't stay. So this will help us figure out where we need to do that. And I'm going to use my marker again, or you can use a pin to mark it. So right about here on that top, this top X, right about there. So when I do a slit, I'm just going to fold it and cut a little slit. Okay, needs to be big enough for my button though. Okay, now I don't want to go too high up because I don't want it to tear. So when I do sew my pieces together, when this comes back down this way, you'll be able to button it. See? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start getting ready to sew these two pieces together. I'm going to line them up as evenly as I can, and then I'm going to pin it so that they stay in place and don't move around. So one on each side should do it. And then like I did before, if I start on this side, I can go around this way, and then I can take off one of these other pins and put it here to keep it in place. We are not going to sew this part at all. So actually, let's go ahead and do this to remind us not to sew this. Remember, if we sew this part down, then we're not going to be able to put anything inside because you're going to sew it. So we don't want to do that. So I've got my string, make my knot. That should be good. And I'm going to start on this side here. Okay, so I've put my knot on the inside because I don't want it to show on the front and I don't want it to show on the back. So it's on the inside, and then I'm just going to go from the back to the front, just like this. And I'm going to go ahead and do a running stitch all the way around. And I'm going to make sure that my stitches are not too big, because if they're too big, then whatever I put in the bag is going to come through the spaces between the stitches. And also, when the stitches are too big, it makes the bag look a little bit more sloppy. When you're doing smaller stitches, it makes it look nice and neat. So you don't want to get too close to the edge because it might pull through the fabric and then kind of create a hole. But we're going to continue this all the way around until we get to the top, till they're sewed together. Okay, I'm on my last stitch. I've sewn all the way around, and I'm finishing here. And then I'm just going to come back inside. Just really small. And I'm going to create a stitch on the inside so that I can tie my knot back here. Here's my loop. I'm going to go through that hole. And then when I finish, I'm going to leave the tail of my string on the inside. So I'm going to come back through the inside like that. Okay, so I've finished my edges. I started here and I went all the way around using a running stitch. I'm going to finish off by putting a little knot here, and then I'm going to cut my piece and I'll be done. So remember, we're going to do a knot so that our stitches don't come undone. I went under stitch, made a loop, went through the loop, and then I pull. Again, you can go under the same stitch for these 2 or 3 knots that you're going to put here. Under the stitch, make a loop, through the loop, and pull. And then I'm going to cut that off. And my bag is complete. So let's see if I can zoom out just a little bit. Okay, there's that little button, fully functional. I've made my stitches small enough so anything I put inside will not fall out. For some of you, maybe you want to use that as your sewing kit box or bag. Okay, it might hold a little bit better than the plastic Ziploc bag you have. That's it.